Captain Sarah Chen's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't bring herself to care. The bridge of the USS Leviathan hummed with quiet efficiency as her crew monitored the Pacific Ocean beneath a canopy of stars. At 0347 hours, everything changed. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission," Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez called out from the communications station, his voice cutting through the pre-dawn calm. Sarah set down her mug and walked over to the comm station. After 23 years in the Navy, she'd learned to trust her instincts, and right now, something felt different about this call. "Put it through, Rodriguez." The speakers crackled to life, and what came through made every person on the bridge freeze. It wasn't just a distress call, it was unlike anything they'd ever heard. This is the research vessel Aurora's Dream, coordinates 31 degrees 47 minutes north, 158 degrees 23 minutes west. We need immediate assistance. Something's happening down here, something impossible. The transmission dissolved into static, but not before they heard something that made Sarah's blood run cold, the sound of metal groaning under immense pressure, followed by what could only be described as a roar that seemed to come from the depths of the ocean itself. "Rodriguez, can you clean that up?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the chill running down her spine. "Working on it, Captain. The signal's weak, but I'm getting something." "Wait, there's more." The speakers hissed back to life, and this time the voice was different, younger, more panicked. "Anyone listening, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, marine biologist aboard the Aurora's Dream. Our depth charges triggered something big. The sonar readings are off the charts. It's moving toward the surface." "God help us, it's massive." Static swallowed the transmission again, but the coordinates were clear. Sarah quickly calculated the distance in her head. They were roughly 200 nautical miles from the distress signal. "Helm, set course for those coordinates, flank speed," she ordered. "And send out a general distress relay. Every ship in the Pacific needs to know about this." What Captain Chen didn't know was that her decision to broadcast that relay would trigger the largest naval response in peacetime history. Within minutes, the encrypted emergency frequencies were alive with chatter as naval commands across the globe began to move. At Naval Base San Diego, Admiral James Iron Mike Harrison was pulled from his bed at 0400 hours. The gruff, 60-year-old commander had seen action in 3 conflicts and thought he'd heard every kind of emergency call possible. He was wrong. "Sir, we've got a situation," Captain Lisa Park, his aide, said as she handed him the preliminary report. "Multiple ships are responding to a distress call from a research vessel. Initial reports suggest, well, sir, you need to see this." Harrison scanned the document, his weathered face growing more serious with each line. "Get me the Reagan and the Ford. I want our carrier groups moving within the hour." "Sir, both carrier groups? That's a significant deployment for a rescue mission." "Captain, trust me on this one. Something tells me this isn't just a rescue mission." Harrison's instincts were spot on. Half a world away, Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force was having a similar conversation with her staff aboard the JDS Yamato, Japan's most advanced destroyer. "Admiral, the American distress relay mentions sonar readings that don't match any known marine life," her intelligence officer reported. "Our own listening posts picked up acoustic signatures before the transmission cut out." Tanaka studied the data on her tablet, her expression growing more concerned. "These readings, they're similar to the anomalous signals we detected last month near the Mariana Trench." "You think there's a connection?" "I think we can't afford to assume there isn't." "Signal the fleet. We're moving to support the American response." The wheels of military might begin to turn across the Pacific. The USS Reagan and USS Gerald are Ford carrier strike groups altered course, their nuclear-powered engines pushing them toward the coordinates at maximum speed. From Pearl Harbor, the USS Columbia and USS Virginia, 2 of America's most advanced attack submarines, dove deep and silent toward the distress signal. But it wasn't just the Americans and Japanese responding. The distress relay had been picked up by naval listening posts around the world, and the mysterious nature of the emergency was drawing attention from unexpected quarters. In the South China Sea, Admiral Liu Wei of the People's Liberation Army Navy stood on the bridge of the CNS Shandong, China's newest aircraft carrier. The relay had been intercepted by Chinese intelligence, and the implications were troubling. "Admiral, our analysis suggests this could be related to the seismic activity we've been monitoring," his science officer reported. "The coordinates match an area where we've detected unusual electromagnetic signatures." Lu Wei nodded grimly. "Signal the fleet. We're going to investigate." The Chinese response was swift and massive. The Shandong carrier group, accompanied by 6 destroyers and 4 submarines, began steaming toward the coordinates. What had started as a rescue mission was rapidly becoming the largest gathering of naval power in the Pacific since World War II. Back aboard the Leviathan, Captain Chen watched her radar screen with growing amazement. "Jesus, Rodriguez, how many ships are responding?" "Last count, Captain, we have 17 surface vessels converging on the coordinates, plus at least 8 submarines that we know of. The Japanese, Chinese, Russians, and even the British are sending assets." "The British? From where?" HMS Queen Elizabeth was conducting exercises with the Australian Navy about 400 miles south. "They're en route with a full escort." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. In her entire career, she'd never seen a response like this. Something about that distress call had triggered every major naval power to send their best and most powerful ships toward a single point in the Pacific. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," the helmsman announced. "Reduce speed to 1/3. All stop when we reach the signal's origin point." Sarah picked up the ship's intercom. "This is the captain. All hands, prepare for search and rescue operations. We don't know what we're going to find out there, but we're going to be ready for anything." The Leviathan slowed as they approached the coordinates. The ocean looked deceptively calm, its surface reflecting the first hints of dawn. But Sarah's instruments told a different story. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings on sonar," the sonar operator called out. "There's something large moving about 2,000 feet down. It's huge." "How huge?" "At least 300 feet long, maybe more. And it's moving in a pattern I've never seen before. Almost like it's searching for something." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Any sign of the Aurora's dream?" "Negative, Captain. But I'm picking up debris scattered across the ocean floor. Could be wreckage." The implications hit everyone on the bridge at once. If the research vessel had been destroyed, what had caused it? And what was that massive object still moving far below them? "Captain, incoming transmission," Rodriguez announced. "It's from the USS Reagan. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you directly." Sarah accepted the secure channel. "Admiral, this is Captain Chen aboard the Leviathan." "Captain, what's your status?" "We're still 6 hours out, but we're getting some interesting intel from our satellites." "Sir, we've located the coordinates, but no sign of the research vessel. However, sonar is showing a large object moving on the ocean floor. Could be biological." There was a pause before Harrison responded. "Captain, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We've been analyzing the acoustic signatures from the original distress call. Our marine biologists are saying those sounds don't match any known species. Whatever's down there, it's something new." "New how, sir?" "New as in possibly the largest marine life form ever discovered. And based on the electromagnetic readings our satellites are picking up, it might not be entirely natural." Sarah felt the deck seem to shift beneath her feet, though she knew the ship was rock steady. "Sir, are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet, Captain. But I want you to maintain position and observe. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to make contact with whatever's down there until we arrive with a full task force." "Understood, sir." The connection ended, leaving Sarah staring at the sonar display. The massive object was still moving, and now it seemed to be ascending toward the surface. "Captain, whatever it is, it's rising," the sonar operator reported, his voice tight with concern. "Current depth 1,500 feet and ascending at a rate of 50 feet per minute." Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "General quarters. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. The Leviathan transformed as sailors rushed to their positions. Gun turrets rotated, missile systems came online, and the ship's defensive systems activated. But deep down, Sarah knew that conventional weapons might not be enough for whatever was coming up from the depths. "Captain, I'm getting multiple contacts on sonar now," the operator called out. "At least 6 large objects, all ascending. They're surrounding us." Sarah's mind raced. 6 objects, each massive, all rising toward the surface in a coordinated pattern. This wasn't random animal behavior. This was tactical. "Rodriguez, send an emergency transmission to all responding ships. Tell them we have multiple large contacts ascending from the deep and that they should approach with extreme caution." "Yes, Captain." "And Captain? I'm picking up something else. The electromagnetic signature that Admiral Harrison mentioned? It's getting stronger. A lot stronger." Sarah watched her instruments as needles danced across dials and digital readouts flickered. Whatever was happening, it was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. "Captain, object breaking the surface off the starboard bow." Sarah rushed to the starboard side of the bridge and grabbed a pair of binoculars. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about the ocean. Rising from the depths was something that defied explanation. It was massive, easily 400 feet in length, with a sleek, almost metallic appearance that seemed to shimmer in the dawnlight. But it wasn't a machine, it was clearly alive, its surface pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that created an intricate light show across its hull-like body. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered behind her. More objects breached the surface around them. 6 creatures, each unique but clearly related, formed a rough circle around the Leviathan. They floated silently, their bioluminescent displays creating a light show that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Rodriguez, are you recording this?" "Every second, Captain. But I don't think anyone's going to believe it." Sarah was about to respond when the electromagnetic readings spiked dramatically. Every electronic device on the bridge flickered, and then something impossible happened. The creatures began to sing. It wasn't sound that carried through the air, it was something deeper, more fundamental. The crew felt it in their bones, in their minds, a harmonic resonance that seemed to bypass their ears entirely. The song was complex, layered, and undeniably intelligent. "Captain, I'm getting reports from all decks," Rodriguez said, his voice shaking. "The entire crew can hear it. It's trying to communicate." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face without knowing why. The song was beautiful and sorrowful, ancient and urgent. And somehow, impossible as it seemed, she understood parts of it. "We are the deep ones, guardians of the ocean's heart. The small ones above have awakened what should sleep. Great danger comes from the depths. We need your help." The message wasn't in words but in pure meaning that flowed directly into their minds. Sarah realized that the research vessel hadn't been destroyed, it had been saved. The creatures had pulled it down to protect it from something else, something far worse. "Captain, incoming message from the USS Reagan," Rodriguez announced. "Admiral Harrison reports they can hear the song from over 200 miles away. And Captain, he's getting reports of similar creatures surfacing at multiple locations across the Pacific." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. This was first contact with an intelligence that had been sharing the planet with humanity for millennia, and they needed help. "Rodriguez, open a channel to all responding ships. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate consultation with marine biologists, linguists, and anyone else who might be able to help us understand what we're dealing with." "Yes, Captain." "And Captain? The song, it's changing. Getting more urgent." Sarah looked back at the creatures surrounding her ship. Their bioluminescent displays were shifting, becoming more frantic. The song now carried undertones of fear and desperation. "The ancient sleeper stirs, the deep trenches crack, the fire mountains wake, we cannot stop what comes alone, the surface dwellers must help, time grows short." As if summoned by the creature's urgency, the ocean began to change. The water around the Leviathan started to glow with an eerie phosphorescence, and the temperature readings began to spike. "Captain, seismic activity detected," the navigation officer reported. "Major tremors originating from the Mariana Trench. And the water temperature is rising rapidly." Sarah's blood ran cold. The Mariana Trench was over 1,000 miles away, but if seismic activity there was affecting the ocean here, it meant they were dealing with something of unprecedented scale. Rodriguez, priority message to all ships. "We have a developing situation that appears to be much larger than initially thought. Request immediate rendezvous with all available assets." The next few hours transformed the empty Pacific Ocean into the most heavily armed patch of water in human history. The USS Reagan and USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike groups arrived first, their combined air wings providing an umbrella of F-35 fighters and surveillance aircraft. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force arrived simultaneously, led by the JDS Yamato and accompanied by 6 destroyers and 2 submarines. But it was the arrival of the Chinese fleet that truly made the situation surreal. The CNS Shandong approached with a full battle group, while tensions between the various naval forces should have made cooperation impossible. Instead, the presence of the creatures and the growing urgency of their song created an unprecedented alliance. Admiral Harrison transferred to the Leviathan by helicopter, accompanied by Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the Navy's leading marine biologist, and Dr. Kevin Park, a specialist in acoustic communication. The moment they stepped onto the deck, they could feel the creature's song resonating through the ship's hull. "Captain Chen, report," Harrison said as they gathered in the ship's conference room. "Sir, we have 6 large bioluminescent creatures maintaining position around our ship. They appear to be attempting to communicate through some form of sonic or electromagnetic resonance. Our translation attempts suggest they're warning us about something emerging from the deep ocean trenches." Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "Captain, I've been analyzing the recordings you sent. These acoustic patterns are incredibly complex, more sophisticated than anything we've seen from whales or dolphins. This is clearly a highly evolved intelligence." "What about the seismic activity?" Harrison asked. "That's where it gets interesting, sir," Sarah replied. "The tremors are increasing in frequency and intensity. Our geologists are reporting that multiple deep-sea volcanic systems are showing signs of activation. The creatures seem to be warning us about something they call the ancient sleeper." Dr. Park looked up from his tablet. "I've been running the acoustic patterns through our best translation algorithms. If I'm reading this correctly, they're describing something that's been dormant in the deepest parts of the ocean for thousands of years. Something that's now waking up. Any idea what it is?" Harrison asked. "Based on the context, it appears to be another creature. But if their descriptions are accurate, it's significantly larger than anything we've encountered. They're describing it as a world shaker and a mountain that swims." Sarah felt the deck vibrate beneath their feet. Not from the ship's engines, but from something much more powerful. Through the conference room windows, they could see the creature's bioluminescent displays becoming more agitated. "Sir, we're getting reports from the other ships," Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom. "The Chinese are detecting massive sonar contacts moving toward the surface from the direction of the Mariana Trench. Estimated size, well, sir, they're saying it's over 2,000 feet long." Harrison stood slowly. 2,000 feet? That's not possible. "Sir, with respect, 6 hours ago we would have said 400-foot intelligent sea creatures were impossible too," Sarah replied. The truth of her words hit everyone in the room. They were dealing with something that challenged every assumption about life on Earth. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Chinese flagship," Rodriguez announced. Admiral Liu Wei requests immediate conference with all fleet commanders. What followed was the most unusual naval conference in history. Admirals from 4 different nations, representing fleets that had been prepared for potential conflict just hours earlier, now found themselves working together to understand a threat that none of them had imagined. "The seismic readings are off the charts," Admiral Liu Wei reported through the secure video link. "Our deep-sea sensors are detecting something massive moving through the deepest trenches. It's following the oceanic ridge system, and it's heading for the continental shelf." Admiral Tanaka of the Japanese fleet added her own concerns. "Our marine geologists are saying that if something that large reaches the shallow waters, the displacement alone could trigger tsunamis across the Pacific Rim. We're looking at potential casualties in the millions. What about the creatures that contacted us? Harrison asked. Are they still trying to communicate? The song is getting more complex, Dr. Park reported. I'm starting to pick up what might be tactical information. They're describing leak points, possible ways to redirect or stop whatever's coming. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They want us to fight it. It makes sense, Dr. Martinez added. If these creatures have been guardians of the ocean, and something this large is threatening the entire ecosystem, they'd need help. Our technology, combined with their knowledge of the deep ocean, might be the only way to stop it. Admiral Harrison looked around the video conference at his counterparts. Gentlemen, ladies, I think we need to seriously consider that we're facing a threat that requires all of our combined resources. Agreed, Admiral Lu Wei said. I'm authorizing full cooperation with all allied forces. This is bigger than any territorial dispute. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force stands ready to support the joint operation, Admiral Tanaka added. What they were proposing was unprecedented, a joint military operation between naval forces that had been prepared for potential conflict with each other, now working together to face a threat from the depths of the ocean. The planning began immediately. The creatures, sensing the shift in human intention, began to change their behavior. Instead of simply floating around the ships, they began to move in complex patterns, creating what appeared to be tactical formations. Captain, Dr. Park thinks he's starting to understand their communication method, Rodriguez reported. They're not just singing, they're creating a three-dimensional map of the ocean floor, showing us the safest approach routes and possible attack vectors. Sarah watched the displays as the creatures' movements created patterns that corresponded to the bathymetric maps of the ocean floor. It was like watching a living, intelligent sonar system at work. They're incredible, she murmured. And they're scared, Dr. Martinez added. Whatever's coming, it's something they've never had to face before. The first sign of what they were up against came at 1,400 hours. The USS Columbia, positioned at the edge of the continental shelf, reported massive sonar contacts moving up from the deep ocean. Surface Fleet, this is Columbia, came the urgent transmission. We have multiple contacts, bearing 270 degrees, depth 5,000 feet and ascending. Lead contact is... Jesus Christ, it's enormous. Length estimate over 2,000 feet, width approximately 400 feet. It's not alone, we're counting at least 12 smaller contacts, each over 800 feet in length. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Not one creature, but an entire group. And if the lead contact was over 2,000 feet long, it was larger than most naval vessels. All ships, this is Admiral Harrison aboard the Leviathan. We have confirmation of multiple large contacts approaching from the deep ocean. All vessels to battle stations. Prepare for contact with unknown biological entities. The transformation of the joint fleet was remarkable. Ships that had been designed to fight each other now moved in coordinated formations, their weapon systems turning toward the ocean depths. The creatures that had first contacted them began to position themselves between the human ships and the approaching threat. Captain, the creatures are singing again, Rodriguez reported. Dr. Park says it's a battle song. They're preparing to fight. Sarah watched as the 6 creatures began to glow more brightly, their bioluminescent displays shifting to more aggressive patterns. Whatever was coming, these ancient guardians of the ocean were ready to make a stand. Captain, sonar contact breaking the surface, bearing 180 degrees, range 3,000 yards. Sarah grabbed her binoculars and turned toward the indicated bearing. What she saw made her question her sanity. Rising from the depths was something that belonged in humanity's darkest nightmares. It was massive beyond comprehension, its body stretching nearly half a mile in length. But it wasn't just its size that was terrifying, it was clearly ancient, its hide scarred and covered with what looked like volcanic rock and deep-sea sediment. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its length, but these weren't the beautiful displays of the guardian creatures. These were angry, aggressive patterns that hurt to look at directly. My God, someone whispered behind her. More creatures began to surface around the first. Each was enormous, though none matched the size of the lead creature. They moved with a coordination that spoke of intelligence, but it was a malevolent intelligence that seemed to radiate hostility.
Rodriguez, are you getting any communication from these new contacts?
Yes, Captain, but it's not like the Guardians.
This is like screaming. Pure rage and hunger.
Dr. Park says it's not trying to communicate, it's trying to dominate. The ocean around the massive creatures began to change. The water turned a sickly green color, and the temperature readings spiked dramatically. Dead fish began to float to the surface, and the air filled with the smell of sulfur and decay. Captain, reports from all ships, the water is becoming toxic.
Whatever these things are, they're poisoning the ocean around them.
Sarah realized they were looking at an ecological disaster of unprecedented proportions. If these creatures continued to surface and spread their toxic influence, they could destroy the entire Pacific ecosystem.
All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. We have a clear and present danger to global maritime security.
All vessels are authorized to engage with full force.
Repeat, you are authorized to engage.
The battle that followed would be remembered as the most unusual naval engagement in history. Missiles streaked across the water, striking the massive creatures with explosions that lit up the ocean like daylight.
The creatures screamed in rage, their bioluminescent displays flaring as they began to move toward the human fleet.
But the Guardian creatures weren't passive observers. They launched themselves at the ancient threat with a fury that matched their size. The ocean became a battlefield as creatures the size of buildings fought with teeth and claws and energy weapons that Sarah couldn't begin to understand.
Captain, direct hit on the lead creature, the weapons officer reported. Tomahawk missiles are having some effect, but it's still coming.
Sarah watched in amazement as the Guardian creatures coordinated their attacks with the human fleet. One of them, its hide glowing with tactical patterns, positioned itself between the Leviathan and the approaching Leviathan, taking hits that would have destroyed the ship.
They're protecting us, she realized. They're actually protecting us.
The battle raged for hours. The combined firepower of 4 different naval forces, supported by the Guardian creatures, slowly began to push back the ancient threat. But the cost was enormous. 2 of the Guardian creatures were badly injured, their bioluminescent displays dimming as they struggled to stay afloat.
Captain, the lead creature is retreating, the sonar operator called out. It's diving back toward the deep ocean.
Sarah watched through her binoculars as the massive creature, wounded and apparently realizing it couldn't win against the combined forces arrayed against it, began to sink back beneath the waves.
Its followers, equally damaged, began to retreat as well. All ships, cease fire, Admiral Harrison ordered. Let them go. We've made our point.
As the ancient creatures disappeared back into the depths, the Guardian creatures slowly approached the human fleet. Their song had changed again, becoming something that felt like gratitude mixed with exhaustion.
Captain, Dr. Park says he's getting a message from the Guardians, Rodriguez reported. They're thanking us.
And they're saying that the Ancient Ones will return to their sleep, but that we need to be watchful.
The deep ocean holds many secrets, and not all of them are friendly. Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with sobering responsibility.
Humanity had just learned that they shared the planet with intelligences far older and more powerful than they had ever imagined. And some of those intelligences were willing to be allies, while others were definitely not.
Rodriguez, open a channel to all ships.
Tell them we're going to need to establish new protocols for deep ocean operations. And tell them that we've just become part of something much larger than any of us imagined. As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the Guardian creatures began to sing again. This time, it wasn't a battle song or a warning, it was a song of welcome, acknowledging humanity as partners in protecting the world's oceans. The joint fleet began to disperse, but not before establishing permanent communication protocols with the Guardian creatures.
Scientists from all participating nations would work together to understand the new reality of sharing the ocean with ancient intelligences.
Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching the last of the Guardian creatures disappear beneath the waves. The creature that had stayed near her ship the longest seemed to look directly at her before diving, its bioluminescent display flashing in what she somehow knew was a farewell.
Captain, what do we tell the world? Rodriguez asked. Sarah considered the question. How do you explain to humanity that the ocean they thought they knew was actually home to creatures of incredible intelligence and power? How do you tell them that some of those creatures were willing to fight alongside humanity, while others saw humans as potential threats to be eliminated? We tell them the truth, she said finally. We tell them that we've learned we're not alone on this planet, and that we have a responsibility to be worthy of the trust our new allies have placed in us. The Leviathan turned toward home, carrying with it the most important discovery in human history. The ocean would never be the same, and neither would humanity's place in the world. But as the ship sailed through the calm Pacific waters, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Guardian creatures had mentioned that the deep ocean held many secrets. If creatures this powerful existed, what other wonders and terrors might be waiting in the unexplored depths? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer alone in their stewardship of the planet. They had allies in the depths, ancient guardians who had been protecting the ocean long before humans ever set sail. And sometimes, Sarah realized, the most important discoveries come not from reaching for the stars, but from learning to listen to the songs that have been playing in the depths all along. 3 months after the incident that would later be called First Contact in the Deep, the world had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The existence of the Guardian creatures, officially designated as Oceanic Sentient Entities or OSEs, had been revealed to the public after extensive consultation between world governments and marine biologists. Captain Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a media storm that she never wanted. The Navy had promoted her to Rear Admiral and assigned her to head the newly created Deep Ocean Liaison Office, a joint international organization tasked with maintaining communication with the OSEs. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Pacific Guardian pod, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez announced.
He'd been promoted as well and had become the Navy's leading expert in OSE communication protocols. Sarah looked up from her desk at the Pearl Harbor headquarters. The walls were covered with charts showing OSE migration patterns, communication logs, and most importantly, early warning systems for detecting the kind of ancient threats they'd faced 3 months ago.
What's the message, Rodriguez? They're reporting unusual activity in the South Atlantic. Possible awakening of another ancient entity.
The British and Portuguese navies are requesting immediate consultation. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. They'd hoped the defeat of the Pacific Ancient Ones would be the end of it, but the Guardians had warned them that the deep ocean held many secrets. It seemed they were about to discover another one.
Prep the Leviathan. We're going to need to respond to this. Admiral, there's something else.
The Guardians are requesting that we bring representatives from the Chinese and Japanese fleets as well. They say the threat in the Atlantic is different.
Sarah stood and walked to the window overlooking Pearl Harbor. The sight never failed to amaze her anymore.
Floating alongside the traditional naval vessels were 3 OSEs, their bioluminescent displays creating a light show that had become a tourist attraction. The Guardians had established permanent liaison pods at major naval bases around the world, creating an unprecedented partnership between human and oceanic intelligence.
How different, Rodriguez?
They're describing it as a world ender, Admiral.
Something that makes the Pacific Ancients look small.
Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Pacific creatures had been massive enough to threaten entire coastlines. If something in the Atlantic was worse,
get me Admiral Harrison on the secure line. And start preparing briefings for our international partners. It looks like we're going to need that joint fleet again.
As Rodriguez hurried to make the necessary calls, Sarah looked back out at the harbor. The partnership with the OSEs had already led to incredible discoveries.
Human understanding of ocean ecosystems had advanced by decades in just 3 months. New technologies based on OSE bioluminescent communication were revolutionizing underwater exploration.
And most importantly, the Guardians had helped humanity establish early warning systems for seismic activity that had prevented several potential tsunami disasters. But with every benefit came new responsibilities.
Humanity had become junior partners in a system of oceanic protection that had existed for millennia.
And sometimes, that partnership required them to face threats that they could barely comprehend. The secure phone rang, and Admiral Harrison's voice came through clearly.
Admiral Chen, I've been monitoring the situation. How bad is it?
Sir, if the OSEs are correct, we're looking at something that makes our previous encounter look like a training exercise.
I'm recommending immediate activation of the Pacific Defense Coalition. The Pacific Defense Coalition was the formal name for the multinational naval alliance that had formed after the first contact.
It included assets from the United States, Japan, China, Australia, and several other Pacific nations, all coordinated through the OSE communication network.
Agreed, Admiral. I'll start making the calls. How soon can you be underway?
6 hours, sir. The Leviathan and her escort group are already provisioned for extended operations.
Good. And Admiral?
Whatever we're about to face, we're not going in alone.
The Guardians have been preparing for this too. Sarah felt a surge of confidence. The OSEs had proven to be invaluable allies, their knowledge of the deep ocean far exceeding anything humanity had accumulated.
If they were preparing for this threat, it meant they had a plan.
Understood, sir. We'll be ready.
As the call ended, Sarah began to prepare for what might be the most important mission of her career.
The South Atlantic was calling, and with it, the next chapter in humanity's relationship with the ancient powers of the deep.
The Leviathan departed Pearl Harbor 12 hours later, accompanied by a fleet that represented the best of human naval technology and the most advanced OSE Guardians. As they sailed toward the South Atlantic, Sarah stood on the bridge and watched the bioluminescent displays of their OSE escorts painting patterns of determination and hope across the dark waters. Whatever was waiting for them in the depths, they would face it together. Humanity and the Guardians of the Deep, united in their determination to protect the world they shared. The ocean ahead was vast and dark, but for the first time in her career, Sarah Chen felt like she was truly part of something larger than herself. The partnership with the OSEs had shown humanity that they were not alone in the universe, and that the greatest adventures were not to be found in the stars, but in the depths of their own planet. As the fleet sailed into the night, their wake glowing with bioluminescent plankton disturbed by their passage, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The SOS that had summoned humanity's most powerful warships had led to discoveries that would change the world forever. And she had a feeling that the best was yet to come. The journey to the South Atlantic took 8 days, during which Sarah and her team worked closely with the OSE Guardians to understand the nature of the threat they were approaching. The communication sessions were unlike anything they'd experienced before. "Admiral, the Guardians' latest message is disturbing," Dr. Park reported during one of their daily briefings.
"They're describing the Atlantic entity as something that predates even their ancient memory.
They call it the First Hunger, and they say it's been sleeping since the continents formed." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean air.
First Hunger? That doesn't sound promising. There's more, Admiral. They're saying that if this entity fully awakens, it won't just threaten marine ecosystems, it could affect the entire planet.
They're describing changes to ocean currents, atmospheric pressure, even gravitational anomalies.
Jesus. Are we talking about something that could affect the planet's rotation?
That's what it sounds like, Admiral.
And the Guardians are scared.
More scared than they were of the Pacific Ancients.
Sarah looked out at the OSE escorts swimming alongside the fleet.
Their bioluminescent displays had been subdued for the past 2 days, pulsing with patterns that even the untrained eye could recognize as anxiety.
What's our ETA to the coordinates? 18 hours, Admiral.
The British and Portuguese fleets are already on station, and they're reporting some unusual phenomena.
Such as?
Water temperature spikes, magnetic anomalies, and what they're describing as temporal dist.